jump right into what is a note. A note documents and reports on the meeting or on meeting the participant's needs and desires. Every contact or most every contact you have with the consumer or participant will be about what they need, want, and what we're going to do about it. A note documents events in the participant's life. It documents actions of a case manager taken on behalf of that participant, and it's a legal document. And we'll get into that a little bit as we go along about the legal document piece. That's very important. Okay, so what should I write a note about? All meetings and follow-up activities related to those meetings. So if you're in a meeting and you say you will check into something, you do that, and you must write a note that you did that and relate it back, to that meeting per the PPT or however you do that. A note should be ongoing documentation on problematic or unresolved issues and follow-up. It's a plan to address needs that are identified but lack a resource to get the need met. A note, you should have a note if there's any life-altering events, including changes in family or marital status, housing situations, or other arrangements, employment status, etc. All actions undertaken by the case manager or other members of the team related to the participant services, any medical and dental updates and changes, and this is truly critical for people that may need to read your note after hours if the consumer is in a medical crisis. So having that information updated immediately is very critical. And then the note you should write about their current status, physical appearance, are they wearing appropriate clothes, have good hygiene, their mental status, health, safety, and well-being. So what information should not be in a note? The name of the referent of a reportable event. So if you're writing a note, please, about a reportable event, please do not write the name of the person who wrote that reportable event, who made that referral. That is confidential information. It's not to be written down in your notes. You should not put in information regarding other participants receiving services. So you work with a married couple or maybe siblings or a parent and a child who are both on your caseload. If there's an incident where they're both involved, please don't use the second person's name in the note for the first person you're writing about. You can say their mother, their husband, their child. Please do not use their name, and the same when you go to the other file. Each file is to be only on, the only name in each file should be that participant's name. You should not put in information compiled and correspondence with legal counsel in reasonable anticipation of a civil action or proceeding between the client and the agency providing services. So again, if there's a lawsuit or any kind of an action that a consumer or their family is contemplating, the lawyer that is involved is the agency's lawyer. So you cannot write what you've talked about with that lawyer in this person's notes, because that is privileged information. And these notes are accessible to that consumer and or their guardian. And there also can be subpoenas. You don't want to be writing that information in there that's client confidential work product between an attorney and the client, which is the agency. Any questions about that, speak with your agency about it if that situation ever arises. But that is very important. Okay. So why are notes important? It documents progress towards meeting participant needs and goals or desires. Notes are legal documents, and I can't stress that enough. Ensures continuity of service for participants. It improves accountability between the case manager and the participant. It gives the case manager credit for the quality of the work you've completed, and it allows oversight of the services being performed. So let's talk about what makes a good note. The note is clear, purposeful, and linked to the plan of meeting participant needs and desires. So again, you did this and it goes back to the PCP as the plan stated, however you want to write that up. It is free of grammatical and spelling errors. This would include, please, using full sentences, capital letters, punctuation, writing. This is a legal document, a professional document. We don't want you writing like you might be texting. No abbreviations, no letter U for the word you, that kind of thing. Full sentences with your punctuation, etc. The note must be factual and observable, not your opinion. What did you see? What did you hear? It only includes commonly used acronyms or abbreviations, and we are going to talk more about that later, how that would look. It not only makes sense to you, the author, but also to any neutral party. So if your supervisor or his or her supervisor went in to read a note, on its own, that one note, they should know who you're talking about, who the people involved are. And again, we're going to get into detail on that. It assumes the reader's not familiar with the case, meaning anybody other than you. And it covers a specific context, not summaries that cover long periods of time. It cannot cover more than a 24-hour period. So if you have the same issue over the course of 3 or 4 days, it's not just one note that goes on for those 4 days. So what should be included in your note? Date of the contact, which is automatic, I believe, in both EIS and MAPSIS. The type of contact, your observations, your action towards meeting the needs and desires of the participant, any follow-up, facts and verified information, objective statements, relevant information, and your signature, which is electronic in EIS and MAPSIS. If you have this PowerPoint electronically, you can then click on this box, the middle box there at the bottom, to read Section 13 of the MaineCare policy if you'd like to read it in whole, see what it says. In the next box for adult protective case managers, you can do a click here for the APS procedure. Okay. So the title of your note, and this is for EIS, the title of the note must be a clear indication of what is being documented within that note. If there's an emergency or a crisis after hours or on the weekend or during your vacation, other people who aren't as familiar with the case are going to look at that note, and they're going to look for relevant and pertinent information to help the participant. So if somebody's in the hospital and you're away, who's ever looking for information on those medical issues doesn't want to open your notes and just see HV for home visit or PV for home visit or program visit. You need to name your note, you know, phone call with doctor regarding whatever the medical issue is, so that folks that are looking for specific information can pull just those notes. They don't have time to be reading for an hour to find what's important for this particular issue. So your poorly titled note, it can certainly result in valuable information that's being overlooked or take up time during that emergency. So on this next screen, you'll see title of the note for EIS screenshot, and you'll see at the top, title is highlighted. It says program visit with Terry, and you don't have to put consumer's name because this is only Terry's file. So you could put program visit, you know, and then dash damaged shoe. So we know exactly what that conversation was about in this case. So if somebody's in the hospital, we're not going to look at a damaged shoe note. Your date of contact. Your case note needs to document the date of the contact. EIS and MAPSIS will prompt you for this, but it's up to you to make sure it's entered correctly. Particularly if you don't enter your contact the same day, you need to go up top and make sure that you've put the date of the contact, not the date you're entering it. So always check that date. And you'll see on the next page of the screenshot your start date for EIS 3/21/16. Your contact was on the 19th. You need to change that to 3/19. And for MAPSIS, Your contact date, you'll see there on the bottom of the page, and the same deal. Just make sure that the date is the date of your contact, not the date you're entering your notes. Okay, excuse me. Type of contact. EIS and MAPSIS will give you options for what type of contact a note can cover, although the case manager must document the place of the contact and the person or people contacted. In your note, full names should be used, clear relationships to the participant should be identified in each of the notes, and their role in that participant's life. If the person's a provider, then their service and agency name should also be identified. So the next page, for example, you've got this. Right now, EIS, you have a drop-down box, and you have to pick one type of contact. Brian will talk a little bit more about what's coming, where you're going to be able to choose as many types as are appropriate for that contact. So this is an example of what it's going to look like when it comes out. Okay. And in MAPSIS, you will see also that you've got your activity type at top here with the drop-down box. In this case, it was case management, and your note that the case manager met with Gary while at home in Island Falls. Also present was his sister Barbara and his personal support specialist Janice from Southern Maine General. So you've named everybody in the room, what their relationships are, and position and where they work, if they work for an agency. You've covered all that in a couple of sentences here. So in your note, it's also going to be your observations of the issues regarding the quality of life, satisfaction with their services, current life situations, and any and all health and safety issues. Your personal opinions, judgments, or subjective perceptions must not be included in the case notes. So we have a couple of examples. For EIS, you'll see that the case manager met with Terry while he was at program using a computer, and then you've got he was appropriate dressed for the weather, or as evidenced by wearing his pants and a long sleeve shirt. So you've explained how he's dressed appropriately, and his hygiene was attended to. So these are all facts. This is what you observed when you went to visit Terry. In MAPSIS, you've got the same thing, that you did a home visit and the home was clean, as evidenced by a lack of clutter on surfaces. There was no odor. So again, you can use all your senses. You didn't smell anything, so that tells you it was clean. Those are observable facts. Actions. Actions that have taken place or take place during the contact should be documented. What happened as a result of that contact with the participant or the provider, family member, etc. An action should have a clear link to the plan or document progress towards meeting needs and desires of the participants. So for example, actions, and this is in EIS, when the case manager was visiting, they asked about Terry's day. When the case manager asked further, he pointed out that his right shoe was damaged and falling apart. So you asked Terry if he had anything other shoes, and he said no. So that's what you saw, and that was your follow-up. You asked about the shoes. In MAPSIS, the case manager that had visited Gary was in his new apartment, asked how it was going, and he started to tell you about all the complaints about his neighbors upstairs, how they sounded. The PSS stated she had not heard that, so Gary says it only happens after 9. So he's told you what's going on, and you've gotten what the information you can to that point. So your next step is going to be to follow up on these situations. So this will include actions that need to take place and who's going to do it. What's going to happen and who's going to do it. So, for example, in EIS, the example about the shoes. So after Terry said he had no more, the case manager then called someone to see if they had money to buy new shoes. So that was your action, to contact the guardian. In MAPSIS, the case manager asked Gary if he was willing to talk to the neighbors, said he was scared to do it alone, but, offered to help Gary do that. Case manager was going to follow up by calling Gary within a week and to see if any further action needed to be taken regarding this matter. So you have a plan, and you've written who's going to do it and what you're going to do to follow up on that. Okay, signatures. All notes require the signature of the worker who entered it. So EIS and MAPSIS document who entered each note. It's up to the case manager to make sure that it's your name listed, that it's correct. Hopefully nobody's been on your computer and changed and they've got their username in there. But so just always check your boxes and make sure information is correct. Your name, your date, all of that stuff that's in that first page. So here in signature for EIS, you can see, in this case, it's called originator. Brian wrote this note. So that's accurate and correct. In MAPSIS, you can see also at the top under case note, it says entered by Brian Day. So make sure that is your name. So now we're going to talk about specific note examples or of what makes a note correct or incorrect. So facts. Your note should include facts and verified information. Please don't write assumptions or hearsay. So an example of an assumption, which is an incorrect note in EIS, Terry's brother Bobby called, said he can't make it to the person-centered plan meeting next week. Case manager assumes Bobby just doesn't want to provide parents with the transportation. And maybe that's happened in the past 15 times, but that is still an assumption, and you should not write it in your notes. Here's the correct rate. When he notified that Terry, he wouldn't be able to give Terry a ride, the case manager talked with him and asked why, and basically that he'd been in the hospital due to being involved in a car accident. So, that's a fact. That's good. Your note needs to be objective, not subjective. So, for example, an incorrect example. You visited Terry's new apartment. It was disgusting, and the case manager cannot understand how anyone can live in such filth. Parents also looked horrible. Please don't write your note that way. It may be absolutely true in your mind, but it's subjective. What we need you to do is write what you saw. So, for example, correct way to write this. The home was cluttered with magazines, newspapers, and trash bags. A strong odor was present. That's an objective way to write what you saw and smelled. Okay, on to emails. Email communication, and we all do a lot of that these days. Those contacts can be summarized in a note. What's pertinent in that email can be summarized and put in your note. The entire email should not be pasted as a case note, and we'll show you a couple of examples here. So here's an incorrect one in MAPSIS. Somebody cut and paste the whole email. Hi, Brian, hope you were able to survive the snowstorm. I nearly went off the road, blah, blah, blah. Then you get to what this is about. I spoke with Gary yesterday. He appears he's doing well. And I'm not going to read that whole thing, but that's the piece. If you're going to cut and paste, you would cut and paste that paragraph. You don't want the personal stuff above, and you don't want the stuff below that says drive safe. That is not pertinent to Gary. That is not professional. So you can either write a summary. I received an email, which actually we'll show you on the next example. You can do the summary, or you can, where you write, case manager received the email correspondence from Linda and explain who she is and that she spoke to Gary yesterday. And then at the bottom that you would follow up with, case manager will follow up by arranging a time to stop and visit. So if you are going to cut and paste, you have to preface it with a statement about where this came from and end it with what you're going to do about it. Or you can just write a summary. I received an email from so-and-so, and she said, Either way would be correct. Okay. Acronyms and abbreviations. They are acceptable as long as they're defined before they are used in each note. So, for example, here's a bad one. CM received CC from SMS, PSS, receives recent INV, CM attempted to return caller with NA. That is not okay. I've been doing this for over 35 years, and there's some of those things that I don't know what they mean, some of those letters. And there's going to be people reading your notes who aren't going to know what those say, so please don't do that. The way you do write that information is as follows in the next screen. Case manager, and then you put CM in parentheses so that in the future in that note, not future notes, but in this note, you can then just say CM because you've identified it once. Received phone calls, spell out phone calls from Southern Maine General Personal Support Specialist. You can't do the SMG PSS because nobody knows who that is. You have to spell it out. Regarding the recent adult protective investigation, CM attempted return call. So again, you see where the CM is because you've already explained it. That every note you write, you have to explain it again. So remember, your notes must be entered within an applicable time frame. For state developmental services and adult protective service caseworker policy, that means within 10 business days of the contact, except as follows. Public guardianship or conservatorship appointments must be entered immediately. Public guardianship, conservatorship, temporary appointments must be entered immediately. Public ward medical authorizations must be entered within 24 hours of that authorization. And crisis services must enter their notes within 24 hours of services being provided. For adult community case manager guidelines, OADS does suggest the same 10 business days as we consider that any more than that too long. But again, each agency, you'll have your own guidelines and you need to know those, what your agency expects of you. This is just our suggestion. But best practice is to enter the note as soon as possible, not even wait 10 days. If possible, do it the same day or the very next day. Your memory's fresh, details are fresher, and you never know when there might be a crisis and that information is going to be valuable to somebody else who's reading those notes. Those notes are public record and can be used to court, and they are available to the participant and or their guardian. So again, remember that when you're writing the note. Professional, factual information, because they're legal documents, and the guardian or the consumer can read what you've written at their request. And it remains part of their legal records forever, basically. So that is the end of what I'm going to be talking about. Brian's going to unmute your lines if you have any questions. This is one of those spots you can ask them.
The leader has unmuted your line.
You can either ask it over the phone or you can type it into the chat box if you'd like. Are we able to print out the PowerPoint? Yes, you are. In the Files pod, right above the chat box in Adobe Connect, you'll be able to download it that way. If for some reason you're having a hard time getting that to work, you can send me an email, brian.a.day@maine.gov, and I can send it back in an attachment. If there are no other questions, if there's any adult protective people that are on the call, you guys can feel free to leave, as this next part really specifically pertains to Section 13, Developmental Services Case Management for the state caseworkers and community case management. You're welcome to stay on if you'd like, but it may not be things that directly apply to what you do. Any other questions? I'm going to mute the phone again, and I'll go through this quick, brief segment, and then we'll open up for questions again. Kelly, I'm not sure if it's asking for you to sign in, why it would do that. But again, if you want to send me an email, brian.a.day@maine.gov, I can just send it to you in an attachment. It may be easier that way. Mute the lines again.
The leader has muted your line. To unmute your line, press #6.
Developmental Services Case Management is covered under MaineCare Section 13 policy, specifically 13.02. And since the majority of our DS case management providers utilize EIS General Notes as their source of billing, we're going to define the different contact types and then identify where those various contact types fall within MaineCare policy. And as a reminder, case managers may not bill for writing the note itself, only for completing the tasks, the billable note documents. So when you're sitting in your office typing up your note, you can't bill for that time spent typing. You can bill for the actual contact that you had on behalf of the consumer. In order to bill for a quarter-hour unit, anything you must have, or your contact must have lasted more than 7.5 minutes. If it's less than 7.5 minutes, then it's not billable. That's not new information. That's how it's been for a while, at least as long as I've been in OADS. So if you have a voicemail and you listen to it and you just listen to the voicemail, you don't do any follow-up or anything, the voicemail is 30 seconds, you can't bill for that contact. Now, if you do other things tied to it and that stretches that time above the 7.5 minute mark, then you may. These are the contact types that are in EIS, as Wanda alluded to earlier. There's no longer the drop-downs, the check boxes, so you'll be able to select multiple ones, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Most of these contact types are the same ones that are in EIS today, and they're going to be the same ones that you've been using for years now. We'll just be adding a couple new ones to reflect the work that case managers do currently. These are the new contact types that we've added. There's a PCP team meeting, which documents the annual team meeting or a monthly, quarterly, or semi-annual review of the PCP. PCP revision, which documents when the PCP is being revised. The PCP coordination contact type, which documents all tasks associated with preparing for the annual plan, such as contacting the participant, family, providers, and also writing the plan. And there's also the assessment completion/revision, which documents all other case manager completed EIS assessments aside from the PCP, such as DS supports and services, or the B7, the BMS 99, and those other types of assessments that aren't the PCP. So those are new contact types. The other contact types are the ones that have always been there. There's the participant contact types in which you have telephone contact, office visit, program visit, home visit, employment visit. Those are kind of self-explanatory. Those are contact types where you're visiting the client in a particular area or the participant. And then there's other location face-to-face, which documents that face-to-face contact in any other location that doesn't have a specific contact type note. There's collateral contact types. These are when you contact people on behalf of the client, but not the client directly necessarily, such as collateral contact with the family and the guardian, /guardian, collateral contact with the provider, or collateral contact with the medical or dental provider, contact with crisis service, or with other, which documents any other type of person documented that doesn't have their own specific contact type. There's other contact types. There's law enforcement contact, which documents law enforcement personnel that you pertain to the participant if you had a conversation with them. There's also the in-office meeting/discussion. A meeting, which is a meeting or discussion within an office that is pertaining to the participant, such as supervisor consultation regarding a specific participant, or like Social Security personnel consultation regarding a specific participant, etc. We had a lot of questions regarding that because people were asking, well, is supervision billable now? To which we said, no, but if you're consulting with the supervisor and they're giving you specific information and following up on it, then it may be. And then we suggested people contact Josh Birdwell, who is the MaineCare provider relations specialist for Section 13. So we contacted him ourselves just to make sure we had all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted. And so we put this information in there from the Section 13 policy writer, in which he clarifies regular conversations that would occur during supervision are not MaineCare reimbursable. The supervisor is called in to consult on the development of the care plan. That time can be reimbursable. So that was their explanation for it. If you have any more information, I would really suggest that you contact Josh, because we can't technically define what MaineCare deems as billable or not, because they're a separate office. The last contact type is the documents communication sent/received, which is the sending or receiving of documents or other forms of communication that pertain to the participant. Those are all the contact types and how we define them. And so now we're going to link the contact types to the different areas of MaineCare policy. I'm not going to read everything here. You can refer to the policy yourself. But for instance, these assessment contact types, the PCPT meeting, revision coordination, and assessment completion, would all fall under 13.02A, which is comprehensive assessment and periodic reassessment of an eligible member to determine service needs. And those same contact types can also fall under 13.02B, which is the development and periodic revision of the individual plan of care. And all the collateral contact types and the sending and receiving of documentation covered under 13.02C, which is referral and related activities that help an eligible member obtain needed services. And then all the other contact types, including the contact types with the client, are covered under 13.02D, which is monitoring and follow-up activities. So this is what the 13.02D justifies most of the work that a case manager does on a regular basis. So the thematic note, as we alluded to earlier with the different checkboxes, you can now complete a thematic note that allows multiple contact types to be selected within one note. As an example, if a home visit is completed with both the participant and their parent, then two contact types could be selected: home visit, face-to-face, and collateral contact with family/guardian. So that allows for the completion of a thematic note. If multiple contacts are made regarding the same theme, then one note can be made to cover all the contacts, as opposed to creating separate notes for each separate contact. Even if a thematic note takes place over hours of time, only the time that was spent was billable, can be claimed as billable time. And no note may cover more than a 24-hour period. To give an example, this is a thematic note. The case manager received a phone call from Terry regarding his dissatisfaction with community supports. CM contacted community support supervisor, and then the CM coordinated a meeting. Now, the way the note's written out, it makes it seem like all these contacts happened in rapid succession, one right after another. But in reality, it doesn't always happen that quickly. Sometimes you get a phone call, then you have to call them back, and then you call someone, leave a voicemail, they get back to you later. And so this could have taken place over the course of the entire day. But instead of writing 3 separate notes, or instead of writing one note and only being able to choose one contact type, now you can choose one note and you can do all the contact types that you completed on behalf of the client. So for this example, it would be a telephone contact with the client, a collateral contact with family/guardian, and also collateral contact with provider. You no longer have to select one that you think is the best contact type. You can select all the contact types and really justify and document all of the work that you're doing. A little plug for our writing skills unit from C2. You can visit the maine.gov DHHS/C2 to see when trainings are available in your area. We've been told that it technically isn't open to only state employees, but it's possible we could open up a session to the community members, but I just can't guarantee that at this time. You can feel free to take a look, at least for the state workers, and see if you're interested in taking this training. But what we've done today kind of goes over what OADS expects to be in a note, but this one covers more specifically writing skills in general. So I'm going to open up the phone again for any other questions. You can say it over the line, type it in the chat box. Otherwise, we can consider this over with.
The leader has unmuted your line.
And also, as a friendly reminder, please complete the survey and give us some feedback. The link at the top of the chat box.
Questions at all?
If there are no questions, you can feel free to leave the line. If you come up with questions later on, or if you want the PowerPoint, you can email Wanda or I, and we can get back to you with the best answer or send you the PowerPoint. Thanks for your time.
Bye now.
The leader has disconnected. The conference will be terminated in 5 minutes.